Hi everyone! In today's video I just wanted to show you how I made this stamp or relief print with the multiple blocks. It was every year I make Christmas cards to send to my other kind of printmaking friends and art friends, and this year was no different. And a lot of times I usually try to make either a lino cut or a wood engraving, but this year I've been doing a lot of children's book illustration, and I just had this idea for this bird who's opening a present that's more of a kind of a illustrational theme than maybe kind of my realistic animals that I usually do with printmaking. And so let me just kind of go over the process. I've already printed them, so I'm kind of retroactively showing you what I did, and then I have a little video at the end that I'll show you about how I printed them. And so when I had this idea, I first sketched it into my sketchbook, and then from there I took a photo of it onto my iPad and I drew it on my iPad. And what I did was I colored the picture on the iPad the way that I wanted it, and then I took each color and kind of separated it onto its own layer. And in my actual illustration I had yellow, but I realized I don't have a yellow stamp pad, and so I just decided to put the yellow as part of the blue layer. And then the reason why I decided to use kind of stamp pads instead of regular ink, like my original idea was because we were kind of getting close to Christmas shipping time or mailing time, and I didn't have time to wait for, my original idea was for just the one black and white image, and I was going to print it with as a lino cut with ink, but then I figured time was going to be scarce, and so I decided to make it into this colored kind of stamp thing. And, you know, these kind of dry immediately or within minutes. And so that way I was able to print them and then send them out the next day, and they were fine. No drying time needed. And so to get back to the process, so after I had kind of separated all my colors out, I made everything black and white. And then this was kind of the size that my image was. And then from there, all these are, if I cut all these out and I layered them on top of each other, they would all kind of line up perfectly. And so it was very important that I keep at least kind of like two sides when I'm making my blocks, make sure that my images kind of match the edge of my block. And so from here, I cut everything. I cut each one on these two edges really neatly into 4 squares. And then I transferred them onto my blocks. And so these blocks have actually, you know, obviously already been cut. And so the way that I transferred the image onto the block was actually something I learned from jelly plate printing. And a lot of times, if I'm just using lino cut, what I do, these ones, my printer is a Xerox printer, and so I can just iron this picture actually on, and it transfers right onto my block. But with these ones, I'm not sure if I can really iron them. And so what I did was I just took your, you know, cheap acrylic paint and a brayer, and I rolled out a kind of a thin layer of ink. So let's see, this matches this one. And so I rolled out a thin layer of ink onto my block, and then I matched this up with the corners. And then I just kind of, with my hand, kind of pushed it down. And then when you peel it off, because of the Xerox ink, you know, is a oily surface, and then the water is more of an absorbent surface. The paper actually pulled off the paint off the paper, and wherever the ink was, it kind of left a residue of paint over there. And so then that way, that was just a really fast way for me to transfer the image onto my block. And so the same thing also with this one. So I inked it up with the paint, or, you know, roll it up with the paint, rubbed it with my hand, pulled it off, and you can see, you know, where I had actually brayered the ink on there. And so that's how I transferred my images onto the block. And then you might notice that there's an actual, you know, this one obviously doesn't match up. And so what I did over here was, just to save some of my block material, I cut off, this might get too technical, but I cut off the same amount from each one. And then that way I was just able to save a little bit. I was able to fit 2 on one block instead of having to cut up 2 blocks that I had at home. And so they're all actually, these 2 are the same, but these 2 are different just because this is what I had at home. So they're just all kind of test pieces that I've bought over the years that it was nice that I got to use them up. Okay, so after I had transferred the pictures, my black and white images onto my blocks, I went ahead and carved them. And this material is really soft, kind of an eraser-like material that you can buy from Michael's and, you know, most craft stores. And I just use a regular Speedball carver to carve out of it. I use a couple of different tips. I have the little V shape and the medium V shape, and then the U shape gouge. I don't know if you can see it, but kind of the big one to get out the big areas. And then there was really, really tiny details, maybe like in the hat or something like that. I was also using an Exacto knife for those little parts. And so then I carved all of them. And then after I carved them, then it was time to print. And so you'll see in the video, I'm using just a really, really simple registration jig. And since these were postcards, I wasn't really concerned about, you know, having it exactly in the middle or up and down. All the cards that I have to match like in a regular edition, as long as I, you know, just got all the blocks to match up so that it's not all wonky over here. And so when I was printing the prints, what I would do is my paper is just a little bit wider. Maybe you'll see better if I do this one. My paper is just a little bit wider than my block. And so when I was printing them, you can actually see there's a little line drawn over here. What I would do is I would just kind of match it over there. And then I would take a piece of tape and I would just tape it right there. And then I would just alternate all the blocks. It's usually best if you start with the lightest one and work your way up to the darkest. And so I would either start with the red or the green, or usually the blue. So I would put the blue down, and I just matched it up in the corner. And then and the printing was so much fun because it went so fast. So I would just take my stamp pad and actually, you know, I would stamp it here to make sure that I don't get anything over here. And then I would flip my paper down, and then I would you can use a doorknob or a wooden spoon. And I have a print frog from Iron Frog Press. And so you just rub down a little bit with that. And then I would do the same thing. And because on the red and the green, I cut that top off, I would have to use this little strip. You'll see it in the video. I would use a little strip. And so I would ink this one up, put it down and print it. And then the same thing, I would ink the red one up and print it. And then the last one, I would ink my black one up and then ink that. And then because my paper was taped down, it was just really, really easy. We have a cat who's going to probably appear here in a minute. And then I would just carefully peel the tape off the back of it. And then the cards would be ready. Rex. And I have to put Rexy Roo off. All right, come on, go on. Go on, Rexy Roo. Go on. There you go. Okay, so let me show you really quick what the different prints look like. And, oh, and then the stamp pads that I was using, nothing super crazy, just ones that I happen to have available already. This one's kind of an older one, but I really, really like these. I like these Versafine, and I wish I had more colors, but I was just going with the ones that I had already at home, and these seem to work just fine. So just go with whatever you have. Rex, come on, Rexy Roo. Come on, go over there. Go over there. All right. Okay, so let me show you. Oh, and then this little jig, my registration jig, super simple. It's just 2 pieces of kind of stiff cardboard, so it doesn't really bend. Ideally, I would have wanted it to be kind of the same thickness as my block, but I didn't have anything the same thickness, so I just went with, you know, whatever is kind of close enough for this. And so when I was actually printing, oh, Rex. When I was actually printing, here's what the colors looked like on their own. So the first one color was red, And then when I printed the next block on it, it was the green. And then the next color I would print would be the blue. And then I would Rex. And then I would do the black. And then I made a teeny tiny little snowflake block. And so I would just go and hand stamp with the darker blue, the snowflakes on it. And I kind of wanted them to be different colors. And so it just comes naturally once you hit the stamp pad once, and then you hit it a few times, then you'll get the different variations of the lightness on it. And that's how that print was done. So now I'll show you the printing video and you can enjoy how that goes.